are listening to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, this is Brandon Fouché, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show. We're going to get right started because we don't have much time, and my first caller on the line, Ann, has a problem with her dog on a leash. She has leash aggression, lunging at people and lunging at other dogs. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can you kind of tell me what's happening?
Well, whenever I take my dog for a walk and he can see somebody like a half a block away, he starts to pull really hard on the leash.
Mm-hmm.
And when that person approaches, I'm just really afraid that he's going to bite somebody, and I'm fearful that they're going to end up taking him from me and putting him in a shelter. I don't know how to handle him with his aggression issues.
Okay, how long has this been going on?
Well, he's almost 4, so probably, 2 years, 3 years.
Okay.
He's pretty much always done it, but it's getting worse, and I'm just really fearful that he's gonna bite somebody. I don't really know how to handle it.
Okay, let me explain what happens here. Usually, when I get a call like this is related to what we're going to call symptoms. This is not the problem. Okay. This is a symptom. And my concept is, if we solve the problem, then the symptom will go away. So we have to look at this from the concept of the dog's mind, not the human. Okay?
All right.
So the reason that dogs do this is, number one, because of their environment. They really don't know how to interpret how to be in our world, because we are restricting them from their behavior. They have a collar and a leash on, which they know nothing about. We tend to think that we can just buy a collar or a leash, put it on our dogs, and, it's going to work itself out. But that's not how it works. They are sensitive to what we do to them physically, which makes them react emotionally and hormonally. Okay. So in your environment, a dog sees it in 2 ways. And we have to go back to nature to understand this in the wild. Dogs look at their environment as a predator, or B, prey. And if you ever see dogs that run the street, that live in the street, they see their environment as though it's a predator. And so you can be walking your dog on a leash, and that dog will see you if it's coming down the same side of the street and cross the street. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't want any problem. They're looking for food and shelter. And that's why we have to capture those dogs to rescue them and bring them in our homes. Now, once they're there, they live differently. They live sheltered from problems, no stress. We give them everything that they want. And so they become hormonally unbalanced. And what happens is, when you take them for a walk, now they see the environment as prey.
Wow.
Do you understand?
Never looked at it like that.
Yeah, that's what's happening. And this whole concept of, dogs needing a lot of exercise and running off, and it's not realistic. Dogs that live in the street, they live within a couple of blocks. You can find them under that tree. If someone says, "Hey, you seen the pit bull?" Yeah, he's laying up under that tree. He's always there. They're there. They don't travel in different territories.
Right.
But we force our dogs to cross boundaries, which actually embolden them to become assertive and dominant, because they're not able to experience their environment in the way that nature has intended for them to experience it. They are restricted on a 6-foot lead, a 4 or 6 foot lead. So what happens?
Do you think it's better to be off leash then? I mean, how do you try to?
I'm glad you said that. I'm not saying that you should take your dog off leash. I'm just explaining to you where the problem is coming from.
I see.
Because if you can understand the problem, then there are many ways to solve the symptom. Okay? Now, another thing, the proximity of the dog to you is generally wrong. Now, I know professionals have taught the concept of heel since the beginning of working with dogs. I say that's a wrong position when you tell your dog to heel, because that's a position of equality. Equality does not exist in a dog's world. That's based on how humans think. A dog is created under a system of hierarchy, which means that they must have tension from the one above them, and that means the leader. So here's how it works. Let's say you have 3 dogs. You've got the dog on top, number 1 dog, puts tension on number 2. The number 2 dog puts tension on number 3, and so number 2 says, I'm happy being number 2 because I know where I belong. Number 1 is not going to let me climb. Number 2 is not, and I'm not going to let number 3 climb.
Right.
So I'm happy being number 2. That's called hierarchy. Okay? So
that makes sense.
Good. When you're walking your dog and they look at their environment as prey, they're pulling, they're lunging, they're hunting. Do you understand? And in order to do that, they are in a number 1 position, which is the first position in front of you. Number 1 is not concerned with number 2.
So you kind of have to get them behind you.
Exactly. You're very smart. That's quick. They need to be behind you. But that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah,
how do we do that?
That's going to be impossible.
Well, not really, because, let's think about this. If dogs do not believe in equality, and you have them in a position of equality, if they don't believe in that, which direction do you think they will go?
In the front?
In the front, because that emboldens them. So we are actually teaching them to move forward. And then once they're there, they become assertive, dominant, and then whatever is coming, aggressive.
Wow.
So the whole concept of being behind you puts the dog in a subordinate state of mind, which gives you the power. Now, most professionals try to teach their dogs to not focus on the environment by giving them treats, to emotionally make them think of something else. But this is basically a trick.
Oh, I see.
You see?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if we think of it from a concept of hierarchy, then we're going to understand what we need to do. You got it?
Yeah, but how do you try to take hierarchy? How do you try to be the
leader?
Well,
it's about a relationship. So you've developed a relationship with your dog that's based on what society has said you should be doing. And that's generally based on positive reinforcement, love and affection, treats, tricks, clickers, and things like that, which actually have nothing to do with the way nature intended a dog to process information from the concept of hierarchy. And so because of that, our relationship is off emotionally and hormonally. The dog looks at us from a concept that we are weaker than they are. It doesn't mean that they don't love us, but they don't look at us as a leader.
Right.
Do you understand?
So how do you change that? How do you try to become the leader?
Well, understanding it first. Understanding the kind of relationship that you're supposed to be having with your dog. And this is what we don't know. We don't know how to create a relationship. First of all, let me say this. Our relationships with our dogs are based on emotional and hormonal issues. I mean, we can have relationships with our dogs that are deeper than the relationships that we have with our partners. Sometimes we love them more than we love our kids because of how they make us feel.
Right.
So
it's unconditional, kind of.
It's an unconditional love.
Right.
But that's our unconditional love. The dog needs something more. You can be in a relationship with someone and they say, I love you, but I don't want you doing this and I don't want you doing that. And you can say, look, okay, I don't need that kind of love. I need you to trust me and allow me to do this and do that. Well, we can love our dogs, but our dogs need another type of love too. They need to be able to have extreme socialization. They need to be able to socialize in an environment where they can understand everything and then calm themselves down. When you have your dog on a leash and you are restricting them from investigating their environment, then they become stress, and stress leads to aggression.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
Okay, good.
Because he can't smell. He can't go and smell what he wants to smell because I'm confining him to a leash.
Absolutely. Now, it doesn't mean that the dog should be leading you around smelling whatever it wants to smell either.
Right.
Because then you are emboldening it to create a behavior that you don't want. All I want to tell you today is the problem here, and then I can tell you later on how to get what you need. But first, we've got to put the dog in the right frame of mind.
Okay, and how do you do that?
Well, we'll talk about that. I've got another person online. It's an attorney, Marla Chausher. And Marla, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We're talking about leash aggression. Dogs that pull on leash, dogs that go after people and after dogs. And I had the pleasure of meeting you, Marla, and we have been in court together before, and you have a dog that we haven't dealt with that has the same problem, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But before that, I want to bring up the fact that you came to me for what reason?
Oh, like extreme leash aggression to the point of embarrassment. I was at my wit's end because I had two dogs. One's about 100 pounds, the other one's about 50 pounds, and I couldn't even walk them. I called you, Brandon, by the time I was so exasperated, and I had come home from a particularly bad walk where they would see another dog, and that would trigger one or both of them, and they would just go completely nuts and then go after each other.
Okay. Now, Marla, I want to ask you something. I mean, we've got a big problem here with dogs being put down because of this, or we could say dogs that are being killed because of aggressive issues. And the shelters are filled with a lot of dogs that have these issues that are being destroyed, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, my belief is that this concept that's out now of no kill, which I believe I was created out of that concept about 10 years ago, I began to really talk about this problem. And, there's been a lot of programs to produce a no kill, what we call it, situation society, or,
Yeah.
But,
no kill shelters.
Right. But I feel the number one reason that we are killing has to do with aggression. Now, to me, it's like the big elephant in the room. It's like nobody wants to talk about that. We want to come up with all these other reasons about why dogs are being killed, but the calls that I take usually have to do with aggression. And these are people that are thinking, hey, I have to give my dog up because they're being aggressive. They go into the shelter, they behave the same way, and then they are destroyed. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think people, once their dog bites somebody or they show signs of aggression, I think they're terrified of the liability issues associated with that.
Okay.
They're afraid of being sued.
Okay. So what I wanted to ask you, just hear me out. If you've got dogs that are aggressive, and dogs come to me for this very issue, and we can solve these problems within a matter of a couple of hours, or get it to the point where the client can actually control it. I call them consumers. I call these people that have the dogs that are turning them into the shelter, and those people that are taking dogs out of the shelter, they're consumers, okay? And if they are taught how to do the Fouché way, then they can control this aggression in their dog. Then we're not looking at the institutions in society that are telling us how to deal with our dogs, that this dog can't be adopted because of its aggressive issues, because we've elevated the level of understanding of the consumer. It comes from there. They've got to be willing to do what we need done, not the rescue or the shelters. Do you agree?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think if people understood, I think also dogs in shelter environments are subject to a lot of stress and oftentimes appear to be aggressive when maybe they're really not, or once they're removed from that environment, behave quite differently.
Okay,
often they're deemed aggressive and killed for whatever reason.
Yeah, okay, well, let's take you for an example. Your situation with aggression, maybe not you personally, but you could be that kind of person that would say, you know what, I can't deal with this. I'm going to send my dogs into the shelter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, have you been other places for help?
What would I?
No, I'm saying, have you gone to other places for help? Trainers, behavioralists,
Other
whatever.
than to you?
Yeah.
I did take one of my dogs, my smaller dog, several years ago. I took her to training. I took her to traditional training, and she graduated pretty close to the top of her class with the sit, stay, come, and all of those tricks. But that didn't solve the other problems that we had, which are,
Okay, so when you got to
didn't
me,
really help.
when you got to me, were you pretty much at your wits' end?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, when you came to me, did you kind of think, well, I'll just try this guy, but I don't think, another trainer? Is that what you thought?
I didn't really think about it at all because I was referred to you by a mutual friend, and,
Okay.
and he had told me that you could do this, and I was just desperate.
Okay.
And I didn't want more traditional training.
Okay, and when you met me, and I talked to you, and we dealt with this problem, I mean, how long did it take?
5 minutes. I mean,
Now, come on. Now, everyone's listening. They're not going to believe that. But literally.
No, but you didn't. Okay, one of the biggest problems I had with my dog, aside from acting like a fool on the street, was if someone came in my house, or even if I came in my house, my dog would jump all over me, and it was just awful. It got to the point where it's like you don't even want to walk in the front door,
Mm-hmm.
And it was just crazy. And they're big, they're big dogs.
What about guests coming home?
Oh, guests?
Yes.
Oh, that was out of control. I don't think people wanted to come visit me because it was so annoying. And also, I mean, they've knocked people down. It's not only annoying, but it's quite dangerous when they're 100 pounds and 50 pounds.
Mm-hmm. And how long has this problem been going on?
Well, with the one dog, let's see, this was 2 years ago that I met you, so it was the whole 4 years. I had her before that.
The whole 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now you're not having any of those problems, correct?
Oh no, they don't jump on people. In fact, now when I come home, they don't usually even get up. They kind of look up and go, "Yeah, it's you." And if a guest comes over, now they know that I don't even have to tell them to go to bed. They just go to their beds, and they're not allowed to greet my guests until I tell them they can.
Okay, that's great. That's what we want to hear. I've got another caller online. We want to bring them in. This was a client that we want to hear what their problem was. Nicole, are you there? Hello, Nicole?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Nicole? Are you there? This is Brandon of the Fouché Way Radio Show. Can you hear us? I think she might be having a problem with her line. Are you there, Nicole?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. This is Brandon with the Fouché Way Radio Show. We're calling in regards to your problem with your dog, and you are a recent client, and you want to kind of tell your story to our listeners?
Sure. First of all, thank you for letting me tell the story, and I really hope that even...
Hello? Did we lose her? Okay, well. Hello? All right, well, let's see if she
Hello?
can... Yes, we're there.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must be cutting out.
Okay, go on.
Anyways, our story kind of begins in Colorado. We were in the process of relocating to California. And it's one of those things that happens in life for a reason, I think, because we ended up at our local garage, and I had to take my dog for a little walk before we hit the road. It was going to be a long trip. And I turned the corner, and there was this lady that wheeled down the window, and I was getting ready for one of those conversations of, owning pit bulls and why and aggression and all that kind of stuff. When in fact it turned out that she was thanking me for adopting that kind of dog, etc. And she showed me hers in the car, and it was one of those conversations we just understood each other. And she said to me, where are you?
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to take the call. Well, I think we should move on. Let's take another call. We have a call that's coming in from Lawrence, Kansas. Is there a Carrie?
Hi, Brandon.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I know you've been trying to reach me for a little bit, and we finally get a chance to meet, and I want to talk about dogs, of course, aggression mainly. This show is basically about dogs that are being destroyed because of aggression, and I'm trying to get the word out that aggression really is just the highest form of communications of dogs. It's not really what we think. If we look at aggression as just big ball, then of course it's overwhelming. But if we take it and break it up in parts and see where the aggression is coming from, then we'll understand where the problem is, and then the symptoms will go away. And so we're calling this the Fouché way. And I'm asking you to come on because you've been calling me in regards to help, and I just want to kind of know your story and why you came to call me.
Well, I have loved dogs and all animals my entire life, and once I decided to make dogs my career, I was kind of at a crossroads. I never wanted to be a trainer. Training to me was, boring, number one, very demanding, especially to dogs that may have behavior problems.
Now, Lloyd, let me interrupt you there. You never wanted to be a trainer. What did you want to be?
I wanted to be a dog professional that helped dogs overcome their problems to be able to be placed into homes. I don't even know if there's a term or a label for it.
Okay.
I just knew that training, from what society has conditioned all of us to see training as, never appealed to me. However, I knew that because of this conditioning in society, the only way I would be taken seriously is if I was to go to a training school and get my certification to go ahead and then help people with their dogs. So I decided to go to school. I had about 26 people in my class, and there was only one other person in my class that wanted to rehabilitate dogs just as I did and had no interest in being a trainer, and that was Matthew, and Matthew is now my fiance.
Oh, congratulations.
So basically, thanks. Long story short, Matthew and I came together and bonded over the fact that there's got to be a different way. While our class was out being competitive about training, we were inside the clubhouse watching your videos and saying, hey.
Watching my videos?
Watching your videos on
my
YouTube.
YouTube videos, okay.
Yeah. And saying, we have to learn how to do this. We have to learn how to not manage, but rehabilitate behavior problems in dogs. As just as you said, aggression is so misunderstood. I have an analogy about aggression,
all right,
which would basically be if somebody said, hey, Carrie, I don't like the sound of those words that you use when you're upset. I don't like the way it sounds. It makes me uncomfortable. I would say, but these are the only words that I can use to make people understand where I'm coming from and what my intentions are. Aggression is the same way. It may not sound audibly pleasant to people, but it doesn't mean necessary harm. It just means, a level of intention. Mm-hmm. So that's, what I try to convey to people, that is hardwired in dogs to use this form of communication. And in our world that dogs live with us today, which is completely unnatural for them, we have fences, we have chain link, we have leashes. None of this makes sense to them, and it is confining. And it can manifest frustration, which can then lead to an aggressive display in that specific environment. That doesn't mean this is who the dog is when you remove that wall or you remove that leash. And that's what people don't understand. And there is no training out there. I mean, I consider training at best management of problems. And I'll give you an example. The place command, or people would call it a boundary stay. Let's say we have a quote-unquote aggressive dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say this dog has practiced, biting other dogs or gotten into fights with dogs. What do trainers do? Obedience trainers say, well, we'll teach him a place command. Now he goes onto his elevated bed, and that's his place. He is to stay on place until he is released. So you can condition him, you stay on place no matter what. And then you can eventually bring in the other dogs as distractions, and the dogs can walk around him, and they can jump all around, and that dog's not going to leave his place whatsoever. Well, guess what? Once you take that bed out of the picture, the behavior's still there. It hasn't done absolutely anything to change how that dog feels about other dogs.
Right. Let me stop you there for a minute, because you're getting into something that's really, really interesting here, and I want our listeners to understand something. We're dealing with a creature that I would consider to be closest to a superhero than any other creature on Earth. I mean, these dogs have the ability to smell body parts underwater. They can track you for miles. They can tell if you're having seizures or heart attacks. They can smell cancer. I mean, if you're cooking a pot of stew, they can smell every single ingredient, but they have no reason to single out any one. So if we're looking at dogs in a very elementary way of what you're saying of sit, stay, come, heel, and place, then we are not really giving the credit that we should be giving to a dog that has these kinds of abilities. Right. So that's why I'm saying this is a relationship that the dog is trying to establish, but in the only way that they can, from a system of hierarchy. Okay? They need to know where they fit in with you. So to get further into what you're saying, training is just forcing a dog to do something that they already know how to do, but they would be doing it for a different reason. An example would be lying down. Nature tells a dog to lie down for only one reason, and that's because you're tired. Sitting is the beginning of resting. And that's the only reason that they do it. So when we tell our dogs to do these things, we must understand that it's just a trick. It's not something that they don't know how to do. And we've been taught that if we can make our dogs do these things, then we will be the leaders. But look, I've never turned on a nature channel and saw alphas telling their subordinates to do what we're telling our dogs to do. So then we must understand that these thoughts are coming out of the mind of human beings. They have nothing to do with the way nature intended dogs to process information. Even the positive reinforcement that we do, we can look at that. Now, we've been told that if you tell a dog to do something and then reward him for doing it, I say when you tell him to do something, that's a command, and you do not reward for a command. And so with saying that, let me say what positive reinforcement really is. Positive reinforcement is when a dog makes a conscious decision to do something that you didn't tell him to do, but you like what he did, then you reward him because he had the thought.
Exactly.
So if your front door was open and your dog walked to the door and looked out, turned around and looked at you and came back, we like that, right? We're going to reward him for having that thought. If my dog is looking out that door and he starts to go out the door and I call him back, I'm not going to reward him for that because that was a command. Do you understand?
Right. Yeah, that makes great sense.
Now, did they teach you those types of things in your training, or was it the opposite? You're laughing.
No, absolutely not. Put it this way, there was little to no emphasis on the human or the handler. It was all about, whether it be luring or molding, a dog into a particular position and then reinforcing that with food. It was never about how a human can influence behavior with leadership.
Absolutely.
It was never about I mean, 99% of, they tell us, loosen your leash kind of thing. But besides that, no emphasis on how the human plays into how the dog reacts to any stimulus.
Okay.
And that's, my biggest problem and my biggest challenge educating owners and volunteers at the shelter that I used to work at was that our actions and emotions and environment are constantly influencing behavior, and that awareness is the key.
Absolutely.
And that's why I've been so drawn to the Fouché way, because it really is tapping into what comes naturally to the dog. I mean, yes, they're very intelligent creatures. We can get them to do an array of tricks. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, it's for our egos, whether we want to address that or not.
Then now we're onto the right subject. They are simple-minded creatures, but they're able to perform complex tasks.
Right.
That's their ability. And, we want to get back to the first caller, and I'm glad that you're on the line with that, too, because we're talking about leash aggression. And in your classes of training, and to deal with leash aggression, what did you use? Did you use prong collars or choke chains?
We didn't use choke chains. We used prong collars, slip leads, and then there's like a plastic prong type collar.
Now let's talk about that, because we're always imposing our will upon dogs. It's what we want them to do. That's the physical part of training. When we never think about the will of the dog. So we never think about why do we need prong collars or choke chains or shock collars or things like that, which we don't need them if we understand where the problem is coming from. We don't need advanced training. We need advanced socialization. We have never been taught by society how to socialize our dogs in the world in which we live. We're creating a world for them that the reality is something that we really don't want. We're creating that aggression. And so our first caller has a dog that she's afraid that may bite someone because the dog is pulling on the leash. And I'm trying to express to her, and I think she's getting it, that first she's got to understand where this problem is coming from, and then I can show you how to fix this problem. And the reason I'm tying all this in is because it has to be related to the no-kill. If we're going to be successful with this no-kill, then we're going to have to deal with aggression and understand it from the concept of nature. It's simply a dog trying to get it right, but they're acting out of stress, and that's the stress that we put on them. Now, we have to humanize to a degree, and this is where things get kind of tricky. And the reason I say that we have to humanize our dogs is because we are human. And the relationship and connection that we have to them is emotional. Cannot get away from that. Do you understand? And so her relationship with her dog is based on putting him on a leash, 6 foot, controlling him, and telling him to sit, stay, come, and heel. And then when he gets outside, close into his environment where he's connected to that environment that he wants to investigate because he can't, then that leads to stress. And then stress leads to aggression.
That makes sense.
You got it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Now, to show you how to do that, it's a very simple thing, but I need to show you. So I'll have to see you. You bring your dog. I show you exactly how it's done. It's a matter of 5-10 minutes.
I actually do have him on a pinch collar. It's funny you say that.
Yeah. Well, why do you use that? I mean, look, years
because
ago.
I don't feel like I have control.
Okay.
I don't feel like I have control, and I'm afraid he's going to bite somebody, and I don't want to see him go to a shelter taken from me.
Okay, let's talk about that. Years ago, I used to help people to understand how these collars are to be used. But that was years ago. We're all learning, okay?
Right.
And we don't need those things. I mean, that's a physical thing to try to control your dog physically. And packs are controlled mentally. The relationship that we want with our dog is mental. When those things first come out, nobody wanted to use them. I remember when the choke chain came out.
I was embarrassed to use one, but I didn't feel I had any control.
Well, now everyone has them.
Yes, they do.
Because they just gave in. First, and they resisted.
It's cruel. I feel it's really cruel, but I just don't want them to go to a shelter. I don't want them to be taken from me.
Well, I want you to understand why you're using it. I mean, you are correcting your dog, disciplining them for doing what? Pulling and wanting to bite people. I feel like he's just lunging, but now I'm understanding why he's doing it. Exactly. So if you solve the problem, the symptom goes away.
Well, then you have a big mission to explain to everybody this, because it's very confusing. It makes sense to me now, but I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it till I just spoke to you.
Okay. Well,
it's making sense now.
Great. That's the direction that we want to go with this. And we're not going to solve this problem of people taking their dogs into the shelter unless they're educated that there is another way to deal with this thing. That's really the way that we want. It's an emotional relationship that we have, and we need to be able to express that to our dogs, but from the concept of nature. And that brings us to the topic of discipline and domination, which is a very difficult thing for some people to understand, because we're looking at it from the concept of humans and not the concept of nature.
Right.
Okay? Now,
that makes sense.
Let me try to explain that now.
Okay.
Discipline, of course, is a physical thing. Okay?
Okay.
Domination is mental. We practice domination with people. Let's say you have a child that's doing something wrong, and we raise our voice at that child and say, don't do that. Then we're trying to emotionally make them feel submissive.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's why we raise our voice. I remember a story with my younger sister. I used to go to this little school. I had to wear this white shirt, and my mom used to iron that little shirt for me, and my sister used to always try to iron, and she would say, don't touch that iron. And my sister would cringe for a moment, and then she would try to do it every day. And one day she touched that iron, and she never had to tell her not to touch it again. She got disciplined. So the fact that she was physically disciplined, then she mentally connected to it.
Right.
Okay? Now, with our dogs, we shield them from danger. Like, if you're out walking on the trail and you see a skunk or a porcupine, you got your dog, you're going to put him on a leash, or you're going to pull him away from that. Now, I understand that. That's liability and what have you, vet bills. But if that dog was running the trails alone, and he saw the porcupine and he got porcupined, he'd say porcupines are off the menu. They learn from investigating physically in their environment. The danger cannot be taken away from them. Do you understand?
Right.
And so when you bring your dog home and you give them everything, let's humanize this. You give them a child everything they want. Why does that child become spoiled and have temper tantrums and hit their mother and fight with friends? Why is that when we give them love and affection? We don't give them leadership. And when we give our dogs everything, for whatever reason, let's say you rescued this dog from the shelter and he was going to be destroyed, and you rescued him on the hour of him being destroyed. That becomes your relationship. That defines your relationship. And every day when you look at that dog, or you tell someone the story of how you got that dog, you make sure you tell that story. How I got him.
Right.
And that defines your relationship. But it's not enough for the dog. You see, they don't follow alpha. Even animals in the wild, they don't follow alpha because he hands out treats or gives them kisses or tells them to sit. They follow him because of what he represents. And that representation, they are emotionally and hormonally connected to that. They're hardwired to that. And so they follow him because they feel secure.
So you think part of his aggression on the leash is because he doesn't think that I'm in control of him?
Well, you're not, because you can't stop him from doing those symptoms, that pulling. You can't.
So how do you mentally take control of that?
Well, when we get together, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to teach you how to control this dog mentally and emotionally from the concept of nature.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds really good.
Yeah,
that
you
sounds
have
really
to.
Good.
There's some things you have to see in order to understand.
Okay.
You got it?
That sounds great. I'd love to meet with you.
Okay, great. I want to go back to Marla.
Okay.
Are there, Marla? Hold
Yep.
on a second. Marla, you and I had, I was going to say a fortunate but unfortunate, we were in a courtroom together. I was there as
Yep.
an expert witness. And there was a case that there was a dog that could have been put to sleep or destroyed or killed, whatever we want to say, for biting someone.
Yes.
I want to tell you, I got a call back from a judge that same day that had a dog that was aggressive with people. And he wanted to find out, well, what do you do? What kind of trainer are you? And I told him I don't train. I practice discipline and domination. He says, what do you mean by that? Are you abusive to animals? I said, no. Discipline and domination, not from the concept of human, but from the concept of dogs. And he says, well, tell me more. I'm curious, interested. What do you mean? I said, okay, look, I was in a courtroom today, which he probably knew. Maybe that's why he called me. But I was in a courtroom today where I walked into the courtroom and I felt weak, submissive in the courtroom. And I said, I thought about that, and I realized I felt that way because the judge represented Alpha to me. He was the leader, and we that were in the courtroom were the subordinates. And I said, you are not here today to hand out positive reinforcement. You're not here to hand out treats and to say good girl and good boy. You know what I'm saying? You're here to hand out discipline and domination. And that means he's going to point his finger and tell us what we're doing wrong. And then if we don't listen to what he says, he's going to discipline us. He's going to lock us up in a cage, right?
Absolutely.
That's discipline and domination. Now, on top of that, he says, wait a minute. He says, well, that's real close to our judicial system. I mean, that's basically how we do it. And I said, look, I was not in that courtroom today because, we're there because the dog mauled this person's arm. But we're really here because the owners would not practice discipline and domination with their dog, and therefore they emboldened their dog enough to bite someone. And now we're here in the courtroom, not necessarily because of what the dog did, but because of what the owners did not do. And I said, right now in that courtroom, that judge doesn't care what the next door neighbor thinks about what they are doing with what he's getting ready to do to them in that courtroom. He doesn't care. He's laying down the law. And he's doing it because those people outside of that courtroom didn't have the knowledge to prevent that person from being bitten. And so now they're in the courtroom for him to make the decision about what's going to happen. And because of that, as you know, that dog was not destroyed. He was sent through for rehabilitation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, and rehabilitation really is the only thing we can do with our dogs. Because, for example, if people don't know how to handle aggression, they, as we talked about, they will frequently just take the dog, drop it off at a shelter, and say, you know what, I can't handle this dog anymore. It's bitten somebody, and they get rid of the dog. The problem is those same people will go out and get another dog.
Right.
Because they like to blame it on the dog and say, oh, it's just a bad dog, rather than understand that, no, it's your relationship with the dog that's bad. And until they can understand how to change that relationship, the process is just going to keep repeating itself. And unfortunately, it's the dogs that suffer. They die.
Exactly. Well, look, you're not having problems with your dogs anymore. You're practicing the discipline and domination techniques, right?
Oh, yeah. My dogs are really happy. In fact, my smaller dog, the one who was always insane, and just, really as a hair trigger and was the main culprit for jumping and really just, let's just say being ill-mannered. She is now known in the neighborhood as the good dog. People comment constantly on my dog and how good she is, and she walks behind me. That wasn't even an issue, getting her to walk behind me.
Okay.
And I always kind of laugh when I think of it, because I think, it's really hard for your dog to appear tough and aggressive when they're behind your legs. It's really hard to look tough.
Well, that's great. But I want to ask you something. I know those words, discipline and domination, are negative to listeners, especially to people who practice positive reinforcement. But I want
you don't understand.
Well, I want to be clear here. I mean, you love your dogs. I mean, and I don't think there's anything that you would not do for your dogs.
No.
And I want to get this clear. In telling you about discipline and domination, I'm sure that when I first mentioned that to you, you thought on a human level. Is that correct?
I didn't really know what you meant by it, and I didn't really grasp the concept. But when you, told me and showed me how to, not just to fix the symptom, but like you say, to fix the relationship. All the pieces kind of fall into place once you start to get to, once you get the relationship in
Absolutely.
place.
It kind of elevated your level of thinking, right?
They like knowing what I expect from them.
Absolutely.
They like knowing what their role is. We have a definite hierarchy in my house. My bigger dog is definitely the alpha of the other dog, but not to me.
Okay. Now, you know of clients of yours or friends of yours that had the same problem that you've had, right?
Yeah.
Now those, you've probably known some people who have given their dogs to the shelter.
Yeah, probably. Although they probably wouldn't tell me.
All right. Well, now.
Yeah, I mean, I know it happens.
Okay, but what I want to say, because we don't have much time, you've been able to help those people, right?
Legally?
No, I'm saying.
Or other? Oh, you mean just in talking about what you and I talk about.
Right. Okay. Great. So, and they've been successful. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Doing the Fouché way.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Look, I think Nicole, were you able to get back online? Nicole? I guess we didn't. Nicole? I guess she's having problems there in Santa Barbara. But anyway, all right. What we're talking about here, again, I want to recap. This is related to no kill. In order to achieve it, we're going to have to change the way we feel about aggression. We're going to have to change the way we think about training. Training is forcing a dog to do something that they already know how to do, but they would be doing that thing for a different reason, meaning it's not hormonal. We cannot take this concept that has been since the beginning of dogs, and we see that it's not working. It's like a scientist whose formula doesn't work, and he continues to use the same formula. There is another way to work with them. We're in the year 2012 now. We have this problem, and it hasn't been satisfied. We've got to control this thing. We've got superior minds that are doing all kinds of wonderful things, but we're still having problems in this little bitty area, and we're still dealing with dogs as though they're little children with sit, stay, come, and heal. And I'm saying that it's time to eliminate that. It's time for some new information now, new way of doing things. And there's a lot of people out there that are moving in this direction. And one of them is, we're talking about Carrie. Carrie, we've never met each other. And you've been watching my videos now.
I look forward to the day.
Well, we are going to start this. We put together a nonprofit organization. It's called Canine Hope for Improvement Program. That is an educational program where we want to help people to understand this thing. Understand this because it's really not a problem like we think it is. It's a matter of just elevating ourselves in terms of learning something different, and stop blaming our dogs. And I think you're on the right track with that.
Yeah, it's
You and your
all
husband
about,
are doing this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, it's kind of a slow process in the sense of, like I said, it's, you know, there's all kinds of things that society conditions us to think and believe, and that dogs need training to fix their problems is like it's a big thing.
Let me ask you. We put this program together. Are you ready to come to LA?
Oh, you should just tell me when.
You ready to help? You ready to help dogs and change this thing?
Yeah. Oh, I mean that'd be like a dream come true for us.
I want you to keep
I mean,
watching. I want you to keep watching. There's going to be some different videos that I'm going to start putting in terms of really showing some different things emotionally that dogs go through, and it's going to be pretty interesting, pretty powerful. We want people on board. I want to get in this game now. You know, I've been around for a long time. I haven't said anything until now, really, but I'm ready to show what I know. I mean,
Excuse me, Mr. Fouché.
That's great.
yes.
Brandon,
Yes.
how do you watch the videos? How do you see the videos?
You just go to my website, you click on the YouTube, and you'll see all different videos. The thing about the videos that you're watching, no one really knows what they're watching except for those who own those dogs. But every dog you see was aggressive or came from the shelter because it couldn't be with other dogs. So when you see those videos and you see all those dogs together, understand those dogs came for killing other dogs or getting into fights or behavioral issues. They're all together. It's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. You don't wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to do aggression work. This is something that I was born into, and it's a whole story about how I got here.
So do you just go to your website, your personal website, and then go to it?
Yes, www.brandonfouché.com, and click on the YouTube button.
And then you'll see all the dogs that you're helping and rehabilitating?
Absolutely.
Oh,
There's some new dogs that are there now from Palm Springs shelter that were going to be destroyed, and you will see them there with other dogs.
Okay, that sounds really good.
Okay, and this thing has been going on for many, many years, and it's time now to actually put a program together. I mean, I have something to offer, and I want LA to understand, and I'm open for discussion with this, to teach and show what I know about aggression. And before we leave today, I want everyone, again, I want to repeat this. Aggression is just the highest form of communication. It's a dog that's acting out of stress, and that's generally the stress that we as humans put on them.
Okay. That sounds really good. I can't wait to watch your videos.
Well, watch them.
And meet you. And have you helped me with this problem that I have?
Well, it's not really a problem. You know, you need to understand what's happening. I'm going to show you. You need to be able to create. Now, I want to go back to that. You see a dog that's running the street? Have you seen? There are usually no problems.
No, they usually run away
They
from
run
you.
away, and that's because of how they see their environment. They see it as a predator. Okay, that means that when we come outside and we see a dog on our lawn, most people say, hey, get off my lawn. They are producing that instinct in the dog that makes them feel submissive, the fear. The fear.
Okay.
And that's important that they feel that way. And next time we talk, we want to talk about fear. We want to talk about love and affection and how we're going to make this work.
Okay.
We have to talk about that. I think the time is running real low now, and I'm going to have to sign off, but I want people to tune in next week or call my number, and if you want to discuss about something that's important related to dogs, we will talk about it. We will talk about aggression. We will try to reach this no-kill.
Okay.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Nicole, if you're there, and thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it. Thanks, Brandon.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché. right here on LA Talk Radio.
I forgot how to sign off. I just clicked my...
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.